You probably won't survive this. There's no sugarcoating it. The chances of escaping unscathed from a bombing raid are slim. Yet here you are sitting on the edge of survival, surrounded by people whose daily lives have been transformed into a never-ending battle to stay alive. The bombings aren't just an inconvenience, they're a constant reality, one that alters everything you once knew. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together.
The city you're in, possibly London, is full of life people walking the streets, going about their business, unaware of the looming threat above. But as the clock strikes, the once familiar surroundings quickly morph into a space of fear. That ever present creeping sense of dread builds up when you hear the first faint drone of enemy planes in the distance. The sound grows louder and louder, and soon the air raid sirens begin to wheel. It's a sound that echoes in the ears of those living through the blitz, an alarm that tells you it's time to hide or risk your life. From the moment the sirens begin, the city comes alive with urgency. You've no time to waste, no moment to think about the daily mundane. Your mind races to find safety. But where could be safe when bombs could fall anywhere? The shelters are packed, and if you're unlucky, there might be nowhere to hide. Just like millions of others, you're left to pray that the bombers miss your street, or worse, that you're not caught in the chaos of the blast. The air raid siren isn't just a warning, it's an inescapable reality that shapes your every move. The city is suddenly a battlefield, not with soldiers clashing in the streets, but with ordinary citizens rushing for cover. Their lives left to chance, hoping the bombs fall far enough away not to take them with them. When the bombers arrive, their weight isn't just measured in destruction, but in fear. Fear that gnaws at the edges of every second of the day. You know that there's no real place to hide and no real security in the city. Only the distant hope that the worst won't find you. It's not just the civilians who feel it, soldiers and airmen alike are caught in the emotional weight of it all. Bombers in the sky don't just target buildings, they target the very soul of the city, its heartbeat. Every bomb dropped is an assault on not just buildings, but families, memories, and futures. Even the men who are flying the planes and dropping the bombs are part of this strange destructive cycle. Historians still argue whether the psychological toll on German pilots was as severe as it was on civilians, given the sense of duty they had in their missions, versus the knowledge of the damage they were causing. What is undeniable, though, is the strength people found in each other. Even in the face of such overwhelming destruction, life carried on. People rebuilt piece by piece. They picked up the shattered fragments of their world and began to make something new out of the ruins. It's a strange kind of resilience, the way a city and its people can rise from the ashes, not just because they have to, but because they want to. The bombings, as horrific as they were, couldn't completely destroy the spirit of the people living in these cities. You step outside and breathe in the damp air, thick with the scent of smoke dust and decay. The world around you has changed since the last bombing. Buildings that once stood tall and proud are now nothing but charred ruins and twisted metal. The streets are quieter now, the usual bustle of life replaced by the eerie silence of destruction. Yet amidst this, the resilient spirit of the people who live here persists. The survivors carry on moving through the wreckage with a grim determination to rebuild and to continue living despite everything. As you walk through the city, watching the rebuilding process begin, you are left with a strange mixture of emotions. You are both relieved and unsettled. Relieved that the bombings have stopped, unsettled by the knowledge that this quiet could end at any moment. The resilience of the people around you is remarkable, but the fear still simmers beneath the surface. For now you continue to live to survive and to rebuild. But you know deep down that life will never truly return to what it once was. The city will rebuild, but the memories of the bombings will remain forever etched in the minds of those who lived through it. The days stretch into weeks, then months, as the aftermath of the bombings becomes a new reality. You've seen it all: the broken buildings, the collapsed homes, the streets where life once thrived, now quiet and eerie. But as time goes on, you notice something subtle yet significant. The sounds of recovery begin to emerge. People are rebuilding.
You move through the city now, a blend of destruction and renewal. Some buildings are still standing, their walls pocked with shrapnel and their windows shattered. But others have already been cleared away, replaced with makeshift tents or temporary structures. The sound of hammering and rebuilding fills the air, mixing with the more familiar noises of the city. Footsteps on the pavement, the occasional murmur of voices, the distant hum of traffic. It's strange how quickly the city has begun to regain its pulse. The spirit of resilience is contagious as people come together to clean up, repair, and rebuild their homes and communities.
The toll isn't always immediately visible. In fact, it's often subtle. It shows up in the way people speak, or sometimes in the silence. It's in the hesitant smiles, the brief moments of eye contact that quickly turn away. You notice how some people speak of the bombings in hushed tones, as if afraid to relive the memories. Others don't speak of it at all, their silence heavy with the weight of their experiences. Historians often argue whether this silence, this unwillingness to speak about the trauma, was a form of denial or a coping mechanism. For some, it was a way to shield others from the pain. For others, it was a way to protect themselves, to keep the memories from consuming them. It's not just about fixing the broken buildings, although that is important. It's about rebuilding trust, restoring relationships, and finding ways to heal the wounds that can't be seen. The true challenge lies in regaining a sense of normalcy in a world where normal no longer exists.
Even in the midst of this destruction, however, there is something that persists: the desire to rebuild. It's not just about restoring what was lost, it's about forging something new, something that can withstand the trauma. People begin to gather not just to clean up the streets, but to rebuild their communities. They organize support groups, establish local initiatives to help those in need, and create new spaces where they can connect with each other. There is a strange, resilient spirit that emerges from the wreckage, a sense of shared experience that brings people together in ways they had not experienced before.
As you walk through the streets, you begin to notice the subtle signs of recovery. A new cafe opens, a family returns to their shop, and children once again play in the streets. It's not the same as before, but It's something. It's a new version of the city born from the ashes of the old. The buildings may look different, but the people, resilient and determined, remain the same. And in this, there is a profound sense of hope. The city has been shattered, but it will not be erased. The survivors and their spirit will always remain.
You realize that although people are moving forward, something has changed in the way they view the world. There's an unease that never fully fades. The world outside the shelter you once sought refuge in may look normal, but beneath the surface everything feels fragile. The very air feels thinner, as though it's holding its breath, waiting for something, anything to shatter it again. The constant fear of the next raid hangs in the back of your mind, even as the city rebuilds itself. There's always that thought, that flicker of unease. What if it happens again? Even those who seem to be coping the best are not untouched. You begin to notice the way people speak. There's a certain detachment, a way of avoiding too much emotion when talking about the bombings. They talk about the physical destruction in straightforward terms, but when it comes to the emotional toll, they grow quieter, more hesitant. It's as if even the act of remembering the bombings in too much detail would make the trauma too real, too present. The heavy silence surrounding the emotional fallout of war speaks volumes. People are carrying burdens, but they're not always comfortable sharing them. But amid this quiet, something else is emerging, a kind of a collective healing. The shared experience of surviving the bombings has bonded the community together in ways that go beyond mere survival. You watch as people come together to support one another. You see neighbors checking in on each other, offering help in whatever way they can. There's a deep, unspoken understanding between people. Even those who have lost the most homes, family members, friends, are helping others rebuild. In a way, the very act of helping, of building something new from the ruins, becomes a form of resistance against the trauma, a refusal to be defined by the destruction that nearly wiped them out. It's not easy. It's never easy. But there's a quiet, stubborn determination that keeps people going. The city might have been shattered, but its spirit remains. Every time you walk past a group of people working together, clearing debris, restoring a shop, or even just talking to one another, you realize something important. The true rebuilding isn't about fixing buildings or infrastructure. It's about restoring trust, community, and a sense of safety. The survivors are taking those first fragile steps towards something that might feel like normalcy again, even if it's a new version of normal. In moments of reflection, you begin to realize that these survivors, in rebuilding their homes, are also rebuilding themselves. The work is hard both physically and emotionally, but it's a necessary part of healing. You see it in the quiet strength of those who have lost everything, but still push forward, in the determination of the children who grow up in the shadow of the destruction, but never forget the importance of resilience. The bombings may have taken much, but they haven't taken the will to live, to rebuild, to create something better from what was broken. Even in the face of the rebuilding, there's a sense of unfinished business, as though the real work is still ahead. You find that even as the city around you transforms, you remain deeply affected by the experience of living through the bombings. You go about your daily life trying to move forward, but there are moments Moments when you're alone or when the air becomes too still, that the memories flood back. The sound of an engine overhead, the vibration of the ground beneath your feet, or the flash of light in the distance, each of these triggers brings the past rushing to the surface. For a moment, you're back in that shelter, crouching in the darkness, your heart racing as the world above explodes. You've learned to live with the silence. It's a quiet, uncomfortable companion, but you've accepted it. After all, what else can you do? Life must go on, right? You return to work, you tend to your family, and you move through the motions. Yet you know that there are some things that cannot be undone. You cannot undo the past, you cannot erase the trauma, and you cannot forget the devastation. But you also understand that surviving it is an act of defiance. The bombers may have shattered your world, but they didn't break your spirit.
Tonight, as you reflect on this, think about what it means to survive, to rebuild, and to carry on. The bombings may have stolen much, but they didn't take away the
Resilience of the people who lived through them. The city may be restored, but it will never be the same. The survivors, however, are not just survivors. They are witnesses, and they are determined to keep moving forward. The journey of recovery is long, but with each step, they prove that even in the darkest moments, humanity can still find a way to rise again. As the years continue to unfold, a new chapter of life begins to take shape in the aftermath of the bombing. You walk through the city, observing how it has changed over time. The physical damage from the bombings is still visible in certain places, but it's also becoming harder to distinguish between the new and the old. The once barren streets are now full of life again.
children play in parks that have been restored shops, line the once empty avenues, and the sound of conversation and laughter fills the air. It seems like the city is coming back to life. Yet there's a quiet undercurrent of something deeper, a remembrance that never quite fades no matter how much the surface of the city is repaired. But not everyone carries their trauma the same way. You see the differences in how survivors cope. Some have found solace in telling their stories, sharing their experiences in an effort to keep the memory alive. Others prefer to keep their pain hidden, burying it deep inside, unwilling to revisit the horrors they endured. There are those who have found peace in the rebuilding process, throwing themselves into work and community efforts. And then there are others who struggle to find a sense of peace haunted by nightmares and flashbacks. Historians often point to the fact that trauma affects everyone differently. For some, talking about their pain is a form of healing, while for others, silence is a protective shield. The variety of responses is as diverse as the survivors themselves. For some survivors, the process of healing involves the next generation children and grandchildren who were born after the war, growing up in a world that is shaped by the trauma of the past. You watch them with a mix of hope and sadness. They will never know the fear of the bombings, but they will always live with the legacy of those who did. Perhaps they will learn the lessons of the past and grow up with a deeper appreciation for peace and security. Perhaps they will carry the weight of their ancestors' trauma in ways they don't even understand yet. But you know that despite the scars, despite the pain, there is hope. Hope that the next generation will not carry the same burden of fear that they will be able to live in a world that is more peaceful and just. The shared trauma of the bombings also brought with it a sense of urgency to never forget. Memorials begin to pop up in various parts of the city. Plaques on buildings that were once homes, statues honoring the fallen, and quiet spaces dedicated to remembering the lives lost. These aren't just symbols of the past, they are reminders of what the city and its people endured and overcame. Each act of remembrance is a small but powerful declaration. We will not let this be forgotten. We will honor those who did not survive, and we will ensure that future generations understand the cost of war and the value of peace. Historians and psychologists alike have debated the long-term effects of trauma on communities. Some argue that the collective trauma of a city can be passed down through generations, shaping the way people interact with the world around them. Others suggest that with time, healing is possible, that people can move past their pain and create something new from the destruction. The truth, as always, is somewhere in between. The survivors of the bombings will never fully escape the past, but through time, through community, and through acts of remembrance, they have found ways to heal. It's not a complete healing, it never could be, but it is a healing of sorts. A gradual reclaiming of their lives and their city.
The city once torn apart by the bombings has become a symbol of survival. The scars are still there, visible in the form of cracked sidewalks, damaged buildings, and quiet corners where memories of the past linger. But the people who live here are no longer defined by the destruction they endured. They are defined by their ability to rebuild, to push forward, and to carry on with their lives even in the shadow of what they have lost.
You walk through the streets, noticing the subtle changes. People seem to move with a new sense of purpose. It's as if they've learned to appreciate life in a way that others can't fully understand. Each conversation, each interaction carries with it a deep understanding of what it means to survive, to be alive in a world that once seemed so uncertain. Even the smallest acts of kindness, the shared moments of connection, are infused with a sense of gratitude. A gratitude for the ability to live, to rebuild, and to move forward despite everything.
You begin to realize that the rebuilding process is ongoing, not just in terms of physical structures, but in terms of the emotional landscape. Survivors are learning how to live with their memories, how to find new meaning in their lives despite the trauma they've endured. Some do this through telling their stories, through sharing their experiences with others. Others keep their pain buried, not ready to face it, but no less affected by it. It's a complex personal journey that every survivor must navigate in their own way. Some may never fully heal, but they still move forward one step at a time.
In many ways, the spirit of the city today reflects that strength. You walk through the bustling market, seeing the faces of people who may never have experienced the bombings themselves, but who are nonetheless part of this collective journey of recovery. They live in a city that has been rebuilt, yes, but they also live in a city that has been shaped by the memories of those who lived through the war. They understand, even if they never lived through it, that this city, this community is a testament to survival, to perseverance, and to the power of resilience.
You think about the next generation, the children born after the war who will grow up in this city. without first-hand knowledge of the bombings, but who will still carry the legacy of survival with them. They will hear the stories. They will see the memorials. They will walk the streets that their parents rebuilt, and they will know that the city they call home was forged in the fires of war. It's a legacy that they will carry forward, just as the survivors have carried it before them.
But perhaps the most profound realization is that the city, like the people in it, is not defined by the destruction it faced. It is defined by its ability to rebuild, to recover, and to move forward. Every step taken in the recovery process, every brick laid, every story shared, is a testament to the indomitable will of the human spirit. The city will never be the same as it was before the bombings, but in a way, it's stronger, more unified, and more resilient. The bombings may have torn the city apart, but they could never destroy the heart of its people. As you walk through the city tonight, you realize that survival isn't just about making it through a bombing. It's about the ability to live after, to rebuild, and to continue on even when the past is a constant presence. The people who survived have shown that even in the face of the worst destruction, hope, strength, and community will always rise above. The city and the people in it will carry on. And in this resilience, there is something beautiful, something that speaks to the unbreakable nature of the human spirit. As the years turn into decades, the memories of the bombings, while never fully erased, begin to fade into the distant past. The physical scars of the city are slowly but surely covered over by the newness of post-war life. You walk through neighborhoods that just a short time ago were little more than debris, yet now are thriving once again. The streets that were once empty are filled with people. The air once thick with fear is now filled with the sounds of children playing, people talking, and life moving forward. But for you and others who lived through the devastation, there remains a quiet understanding that the peace you now enjoy is fragile, a hard-earned peace. You've noticed that the survivors of the bombings seem to carry themselves differently now, not with the same level of wariness as in the early days after the raids, but with a quiet dignity. There's a sense of ownership in the way they live, a deep appreciation for life's simple pleasures. Things that once seemed ordinary but now feel extraordinary. The ability to walk the streets without the fear of an impending bombing. The ability to sit in a cafe and enjoy a meal. These things once taken for granted are now precious. Yet despite the return to normalcy, there's a lingering shadow and unspoken connection between those who experienced the war firsthand. It's the shared recognition that nothing can ever be fully normal after such an event, that even the most mundane moments carry a weight, a remembrance of the fragility of life.
The city may appear to be healed on the outside, but the emotional scars remain just beneath the surface. These scars are not easily seen, but they are felt. You sense it in the way people behave, how they interact with one another, how they handle loss, how they deal with stress. Some carry their trauma lightly, sharing stories when the moment feels right, laughing at the absurdity of the war in moments of lightheartedness. Others are quieter, more withdrawn, unwilling or unable to revisit the past.
The trauma has not been eradicated, only buried, hidden in the cracks of the city, waiting to emerge in its own time. You reflect on the stories of those who came before you, those whose lives were forever altered by the bombings. Their tales are passed down from generation to generation like a living memory that refuses to fade. There is a beauty in this shared history, a kind of strength in knowing that no one is alone in their trauma. The survivors' stories become a part of the city's identity, woven into its very fabric. These stories live on in the memorials, in the quiet nods between those who share a common experience, and in the collective understanding that peace once achieved must be fiercely protected.
Historians often debate whether the younger generations, those who were born after the bombings, will ever truly understand the weight of what came before.
While they can learn the history, study the events in textbooks, and hear the stories from their parents and grandparents, will they ever truly feel the pain, the fear, the uncertainty? Can they ever grasp what it was like to live in constant danger, never knowing when the next raid would come? For the survivors, these questions are personal. They know that their children and grandchildren will carry the legacy, but they also know that the emotional scars, while passed down through generations, will be experienced differently. And yet there is hope. There is a quiet optimism that runs through the veins of the city. Now a recognition that the survivors have given future generations a powerful gift, the ability to live without the constant fear of war. It's a gift that should never be taken for granted. It's a reminder that the peace we now enjoy was hard-earned, shaped by the resilience and strength of those who lived through the worst of times.
The survivors may never fully heal from the trauma of their experiences, but they have passed down something more important: the will to carry on, to rebuild, and to continue the fight for a better future.
You walk through the streets tonight, looking at the families, the children, the bustling markets and cafes, and you realize that this city, though forever scarred, is also filled with life. The resilience of the people who survived the bombings has given birth to something new. A city reborn not just in physical form, but in spirit. And as you move through this city, you are reminded that while the past can never be erased, it can shape the future in beautiful, unexpected ways. The survivors may carry the scars of their past, but they are also the architects of the future. The living proof that even in the face of unimaginable loss, life finds a way to continue to grow and to thrive. As the city continues to evolve, you begin to notice that the future is being shaped by the very survivors who once lived in the shadows of destruction. The next generation, born into a world that seems far removed from the horrors of the past, carries with it a deep understanding that the peace they now experience is the result of immense sacrifice. They are the ones who will carry forward the lessons learned from the survivors' lessons that, although never fully understood by those who didn't experience the bombings, are still deeply ingrained in the city's collective consciousness.
You walk through the streets, watching the children play, their laughter ringing out in the air. They are unaware of the history that shaped the world they live in, of the families that fought to survive and to rebuild in the aftermath of such devastation. Yet there's something in the way they play, something in the carefree nature of their existence that feels like a tribute to the resilience of those who came before them. The survivors may have borne the brunt of the destruction, but it is these children, these future generations who are living the peace that was so hard won.
While the survivors of the bombings may carry the weight of their experiences, they also carry a sense of pride in what they've achieved. The city once broken has been rebuilt, not just physically, but in terms of spirit and community. The people who lived through the bombings, the ones who endured the fear and loss, are the ones who have rebuilt not only their homes, but the very fabric of their society. In this, there is a quiet but powerful message that no matter how many times the world is shattered, no matter how deeply it is torn apart, the human spirit can always find a way to survive, to rebuild, and to move forward.
You also realize that in some ways, the scars of the past are still present, not just in the survivors, but in the city itself. The memorials, the plaques, the quiet spaces dedicated to those who were lost. They serve as a constant reminder that while the city has healed, it will never forget. The memory of the bombings of the people who lived and died is woven into the very fabric of this place. It's a part of the city's identity, a part of its soul. And though the physical city may change and grow, these memories will remain passed down from one generation to the next.
Historians still debate the role of collective memory in post-trauma recovery. Some suggest that constantly revisiting the past can slow healing, while others argue that it's essential to ensure that the horrors of war are never forgotten. For the survivors, this is a deeply personal question. They know that in order to move forward, they must never forget the past, even as they rebuild their lives.
The memories, the losses, the experiences they shape who they are, but they do not define them. They are not just survivors of the bombings, they are architects of the future using the strength forged in the crucible of war to create a new world, one where peace is cherished and never taken for granted.
You witness the transformation as it happens. The streets are no longer filled with rubble, but with the sounds of life, the chatter of market vendors, the rustle of newspapers, the hum of conversation. People are beginning to dream again, to plan for the future, to envision a world that isn't defined by destruction, but by growth. The survivors, though they will never be free of their memories, are finding ways to live with them, to live beyond them. And in this, they have given the city a gift of strength, resilience, and the unwavering belief that even in the face of war, humanity will always find a way to rebuild and move forward.
As you walk through this reborn city tonight, you realize that the past will always be a part of you, a part of the city, a part of everyone who has lived through it. But the future is something you can shape. The survivors of the bombings may carry the scars of war, but they have also given the city its heart. And that heart beats strong, filled with the pulse of life, of community, and of an enduring
Hope that will never fade. The bombings may have taken much, but they could never take away the spirit of those who survived. As the years wear on, the city begins to find its rhythm, its life moving more smoothly. though never without a slight unease lingering in the air. The survivors who once walked through the streets in fear now walk with a quiet strength. They have endured, rebuilt, and found a sense of stability again, but there is an understanding that peace is something you must work for every day.
You witness as the years pass how the memories of the past are passed down not with grief, but with purpose. The survivors have not just rebuilt their homes and lives.
They've built a foundation for future generations to thrive, one that is grounded in the lessons of survival, strength, and community.
You feel the shift in the city's energy. There's a gentleness now, a kind of calm that wasn't there before. The air is clearer. The streets are filled with people who have learned to value every small interaction, every fleeting moment of connection. The survivors might be older, now the children have grown, and the scars are less visible. But the heart of the city has been forever changed. It beats with the rhythm of perseverance, of determination, of life that refuses to yield no matter how many bombs fell. The city itself has taken on a new identity. While the scars from the bombings may still be visible in the form of rebuilt buildings and memorials, the city has also grown into something resilient and full of life. It's a place where the weight of history is always present, but it no longer suffocates the present. The city has transformed into something new, a place where both the past and the future coexist, each giving meaning to the other. The survivors have shown the world that even in the face of the most horrific events, life finds a way to thrive.
Yet despite the physical and emotional rebuilding, there are moments when the memories of those dark days resurface. You find yourself walking past a memorial and the weight of what happened in that space hits you all over again. For the survivors, there is no way to escape the memory of the bombings. They live with it every day in the quiet moments, in the unspoken connections between those who shared the experience. It's not something they can push away, but it's also not something that defines them. They have learned to carry it with grace, to honor it, without letting it control their every action. As the city continues to evolve, you begin to see that the legacy of the bombings is not just one of destruction, but one of rebirth. The people have learned that while they cannot change the past, they can shape the future. And in shaping that future, they honor those who didn't survive, those who were lost in the bombings. The memorials, the quiet moments of reflection, are a way of keeping the memory alive. They are a way of ensuring that the pain of the past is not forgotten, but also a way of saying that it will not define the city or its people. The city's strength lies not in forgetting, but in remembering and in finding a way to live beyond that memory.
Historians continue to debate the lasting effects of such devastation on the cities and people who endure it. Some argue that the psychological toll is more damaging than the physical destruction itself, while others suggest that the collective will to rebuild helps to mitigate the emotional scars. But what is undeniable is that the people of the city, those who survived, are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. They did not simply rebuild their homes, they rebuilt their lives, their communities, and their sense of identity. They found ways to heal, not just by rebuilding the physical spaces they once called home, but by repairing the emotional connections
that had been torn apart.
As you reflect on all that has come before, you realize that survival is not just about enduring, it's about creating a future that honors the past.
The survivors of the bombings, while never fully free of their trauma, have shown the world what it means to survive with dignity, to rebuild with purpose, and to live with hope. The city is no longer just a place of destruction. It is a place of rebirth, a place where the lessons of the past are passed